This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this will be like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, leave a rating and a brief written review. It will enable other excellent people just like you to be able to locate this podcast. Thanks for being with us today. Today I want to talk about developmental projects in your life. How are you developing yourself? I remember years ago when automobiles had cassette players built in. You'll have to go to a museum or Google that to see what that was like. I had been to a John Maxwell conference in which I got the copy, and I, in those days, paid quite a bit of money for it, but I believe it was he and Bob Beal, and they were just sort of talking about certain characteristics and attributes and skills of leaders. And it was based on a word that described that. And I went through that material. There was a workbook that came with it. And really, for the first time in my life, had a development plan, doing exercises that reminded me or helped me to understand that I really needed to get better. I needed to make some improvements. If I was going to be the leader that I really truly needed to be, then I was going to have to work at it and develop myself. So I think the very first thing is you're thinking about what are some developmental exercises that I can do? What is a program that I can put together? I mean, you can go and be a part of a program and pay money, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I would even highly encourage you to do that. But we can't always go and do nor pay every time there's a particular need. So let's just sit down and go at this a little bit more granular level, and that is, right now, my friend, what are the things in your life, especially in the area of leadership, that you would like to develop? You will have a sense, every one of us has a sense of there's certain things we need to develop. Now, there are 2 or 3 aspects to all of this. It could be personal items, things in my own life that I need to get a handle on and I need to develop. It can also be skill sets, things that I need to do in order to do my job better, in order to be the person that I need to be. There are spiritual, physical, family, relational. But right now, just get you a sheet of paper, or if you have an electronic device that you keep track of these kinds of things. What are the areas right now in your life that really need to be developed? Perhaps another way of saying that would be, are there some areas in your life where you know you're a little bit behind? Perhaps you're lacking. It could just be something as simple as you haven't had a lot of experience in the field that you're in. So what are some of the areas you need to get stronger? Now, don't just focus 100% on trying to make your weaknesses stronger. I think we have to do some limiting of our weaknesses and certainly address them. But you will be a better leader, you will be much more effective, and you'll get much more done if you identify 2 or 3 of your really core strengths and make sure that you keep developing yourself in that area. Don't just develop yourself in the area of your weaknesses, but also get better in the areas where you are strong. One of the things that has been helpful to me is you can't always find the right mentor, the right coach. Again, resources, both time and money, may be a problem. But oftentimes I feel like I have been mentored by some of the great leaders in history, people who more than likely aren't even alive right now. And yet, if you read their biographies or read their books and see what they did, what they were able to accomplish, what they were able to overcome, and if they're a good leader, they'll not just share their success stories, they'll also show you and tell you in pretty vivid detail at times areas that didn't work out so well or times that they just flat out blew it. And I have had a front row seat. It's really become a learning laboratory as I have listened to them, read them describe how they developed certain traits, how they came up with some philosophies that they have. You know, a lot of people think leaders are born. The only people that I know are born are babies, and most of the traits have to be developed. Now, I'm not saying that we don't inherit from our parents and our family certain things, and I get that, but don't just get stuck there. You can get better if you'll pay attention and you'll put in the work. A good question to ask is just, what are the traits that I do possess? Now, again, modesty and humility may cause you not to be able to want to answer that, not to be able to, but that you'll want to. But what are some of the traits? What are some of the gifts that you were given by God? And then, have you ever taken a personality inventory? Do you know what your strengths are? And likewise, what your weaknesses are. Everyone has weaknesses as well as everyone has strengths. But again, don't just focus 100% on your time in getting stronger in your weak areas, but to also spend a goodly amount of time just continuing to develop your strengths. Now let's move away from that for a moment. For more than likely, whatever you are endeavoring to do in life right now, there is a skill set. In other words, if you're a medical doctor, an attorney, an insurance agent, a restaurant owner, a pastor, a school teacher, a superintendent of schools, I couldn't just walk in off the street and do your job, meaning I wasn't born, no one is born knowing how to do your job. And regardless of how gifted any one of us are, when we start a new endeavor, it takes practice, it takes time, it takes coaching, it takes mentoring, because there are some specific skills that you just have to have in order to do that. So also make sure that you're paying attention not just to your own strengths and perhaps certain things that you don't do as well, but list them out. What are the specific skills you need to be an insurance agent? What are the specific skills you need to be an office manager? What are the specific skills you need to be a physical trainer? What are the specific skills you need to start a podcast, to run a business? Put them down, and then you have to write them down first, and then you can begin to discover the people and places that will help you get there. I think as we're talking about that, what are the core skills that you need to master in order to do what you are doing? You have, as a leader, a number of job responsibilities. We have a responsibility to our family, to our friends, if you're a spiritual person, to God. But if you're a supervisor or a manager or a leader at work, there are certain responsibilities that go with that job, and you need to make sure that you are developing the core skills. You can maybe need to develop some core skills in running meetings. If there's anything that I've seen lacking in my lifetime, it is the running and conducting of meetings. If there's not an agenda, if there's not someone holding us accountable to the clock and to working through our agenda, these meetings can go on forever. And obviously, too many meetings are called by people who don't have a whole lot to do or don't know what they're doing. So develop a skill on how to run a meeting. Another thing may be feedback. Oftentimes people are fearful of getting feedback because they don't like to be criticized as they view it, or they don't want their feelings to be hurt, or they really just can't handle it if folks don't think they're the most brilliant person in the room. So it may be that you just need to develop some methodologies and ways of getting feedback. Perhaps it's public speaking. Now, you may never be someone who's going to get up and give speeches for a living, but more than likely as a leader, there's going to come times both formally and informally where you have to share specific information in front of a persons, or in front of a group. I think it's okay to listen and learn from how to make a speech. I think at this point there is such a richness and variety of material available really for nothing. You can go on YouTube, you can listen to TED Talks, you can but listen not just for the information. Listen to see if there are some tips of public speaking, capturing people's attention, being concise, being organized. How do they share the information? with the group. It could be that you need to hone some skills on how do I transform my personal decisions into decisions that are actionable at work or even actionable in my own life. And again, there's a plethora of material out there. Just make sure that you're aligning your skills and your gifts and your training. You're training in those things, not just it's nice to know, it's nice to hear, that we'd all love to do more of that, but things that align with the fact these are the skills that I really need to develop. Now let's get back to your weaknesses, because you can't totally ignore them. Often, before all of us have, I don't care what you do for a living, there are parts of it that you would do for free if you could, and there are other parts you feel like they could never pay me enough money to have to do this part of it. And we all have parts in what we do that aren't comfortable, aren't things that we enjoy doing. So what I would also say to you as you're coming up with a development plan is, are there some gaps that need to be closed? It doesn't mean that you're ever going to be super strong in that particular area or travel the country giving seminars on that particular subject, but there's quite a wide gap from where you are to where you have to have minimal expertise in order to function in what you're doing. And I don't know what that is, whether that's project planning, whether that's follow through, whether that's communication. Don't just think of skills to be further enhanced and strength to be developed. I've told you that's important. But also just look at your life and where you are and what are some gaps that need to be closed a little bit, or there doesn't need to be as wide a gap. I think in development, don't ever forget the relational aspect, because at the end of the day, leaders have to interact with people. You need to. You interact with a variety of stakeholders, whether it's the stock owners, whether it's the volunteers, whether it's the paid staff, whether it's your colleagues, whether it's someone above you as a supervisor or a manager. There are all sorts of stakeholders, all of whom have a vested interest in what's happening. And so what you need to do is, how do I build relationships? It could be that your developmental plan, if you're not an overly relational person, it may be just to kind of do some reading, get a mentor, go somewhere to build those skills of how do you build and develop relationships. I think one that was very difficult for me as I was moving along the leadership continuum of my life was, when I started, I really was a one-person show. I did it all. I was the secretary, I was the custodian, I was the chief bottle washer. I did it all. And so as we begin to add staff, the thing that it became very aware in my mind, and I became very cognizant of, was I struggled with delegation. Because I had done all of those things for so long, I had developed a proficiency in them. And others who were coming in and taking on some of these responsibilities did not have the proficiency that I did. And I have to confess, it really bothered me until I got a hold of myself and remembered it doesn't matter how fast they are able to do the job. Can they do the job? But even more importantly was the fact that by them doing these things, that I had closed the gap and become somewhat effective at, even though it wasn't in my wheelhouse or my strengths. But now there's somebody to help with that. I am able then to focus on the key reasons that I am where I am. I think you have to, as you come with a development program, is what are the indicators of success, not just in life, but of your development plan? Are you working on ways to improve the quality of what you do? Are you working on ways to improve morale in the organization and teamwork? Again, are you working on delegation? Perhaps where you really need, and many people do, is in the area of strategic thinking. Oftentimes, to be a strategic thinker plus someone who can just get up and keep doing the actions day by day are two different kinds of skill sets. Now, you're going to be called to do, more than likely in the position you hold, you're going to be called upon to do both of those things. So it may be that you need to come up with a development plan that will help you with strategic thinking and planning and again, how to have meetings. Always build in continual education. In any field of professionals, there is a requirement for lifelong learning credit. You can't, when you get out of school and you get a particular credential, you can't sit down and say, I now know everything that I ever will need to know, because we are in an information explosion era. New things are being discovered and tried all of the time. And we just have to continually get better, which is even more reason to come up with a concrete and a realistic and an ongoing development plan, not just for yourself, but for anyone who's a part of your organization. I think I came across an acrostic that is PACE, P-A-C-E, that I think is good. The P stands for pick a leadership goal. What is a goal that you have as a leader, and work on developing that? The A stands for apprising others in your inner circle of the goal. If your goal is to develop a certain aspect of leadership, then one of the greatest ways to see that it's accomplished is when you notify others, or you put other people on notice, hey, this is what I'm working on. The C in PACE is to collect specific ideas on how to improve. That's what I basically have been talking about. And the E is to elicit feedback. How am I doing? Don't forget to ask people that. My leadership friend, please take seriously the idea of continual improvement and developing myself to be the best person, the best leader, the best wife, husband, brother, sister, parent, friend, employee, or boss that I can be. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this was like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom and leave a rating and a brief written review? Again, it will enable other excellent people just like you to locate this podcast. Remember, my leadership friend, today, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you are doing better than you think you are. You really are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.